So this weekend's project is to get the Jeep back on the road finally. So this has been down a couple months, unfortunately. I've been wanting to upgrade the brakes for a long time. There's some aftermarket kits that are pretty nice, and a couple months ago the front calipers locked up, so it was just time to do it. Since then, it's been one issue after another. The kit I ordered was the Vanco 16-inch Big Brake kit. So it's bigger rotors, dual piston calipers, much heavier system to help stop the 35-inch tires on it. Gets great reviews in all the forums and online, and so far, I mean, the kit was awesome. I've just ran into one issue after another. So got the kit in, started putting it on, went in and did ball joints while I was at it since you had to pull the axles. That all went pretty well. When I did it, I decided to do the rear brakes as well. They were bad, so I did rotors and calipers and pads on the back. Then this kit is pretty much all that on the front, plus a master cylinder. And I went and did brake hoses on the front. So after installing everything, I got down to the point that I couldn't get the system to bleed. I traced my problem down to the front right. As you can see, everything's on. Rotors, calipers, new ball joints, new spindle, new brake hoses. Then what I found is the first leak I had was coming from this brake hose right here. It was leaking around the threads of this fitting, which originally was the stock lines that came factory, and they were rusted as all get out. So I had to order a new brake line kit. So then of course that was order the parts, wait forever for them to come in, and then get it installed. And of course, this is also the hardest brake line to replace. So to replace this line, you can see it goes back behind the mount for the shock, comes around the front, goes all the way to the front bumper, then it bends, goes across the front of the Jeep, goes back up the other frame rail, and then all the way to the back, and then finally comes up and bends its way to the master cylinder up here. That was not a fun one to do. So after getting that installed and secured, we finally got to where there's no leak there. I still couldn't get it to bleed though. So finally, after having Shanna come help me bleed it, once we were getting to this side, I was starting to get fluid leaking from the bleeder screw. Originally, I didn't see it doing that. I don't know if it wasn't building up enough pressure to do that, or if it was just me trying to bleed it so much through troubleshooting that I stripped out some threads on that and it's not seating all the way. I tried a different bleeder screw, still same issue, so unfortunately, brand new caliper, I'm just gonna have to replace it. So then that took me researching how to get these calipers since they were a custom kit. Originally, these kits that they sell for the Jeeps came with Ford brakes. They were off of like an 05 Explorer Sport Track. So I went and bought another caliper for this the other day and was going to put it on and found out it was different. I reached out to the guy I bought the kit off of, and he said that these newer kits they've been doing, they've switched to calipers from an 08 Ram half-ton truck. So then I had to go find that part. So now I finally have that part, and the goal is to get that on today, hopefully bleed the brakes, and get this thing back on the road and do the break-in properly for these pads and rotors. The new caliper did the trick. Once I got the replacement installed, I was able to hold a vacuum on that line. After that, the bleeding process was normal and went pretty smooth. Then it was just a matter of getting the tires back on and doing a test drive. Alright, test drive was a success. The pedal is still softer than I'd like it to be. I've bled brakes before, but I've never done a master cylinder and bench bled, so I'm sure I made a mistake on that part, so I'll circle back to that. On the forums, a lot of guys said after a few days the brakes started grabbing even better, so I'll give it a little bit. Might bleed through one more time on each corner just to make sure. And then if it's still softer than I think it should be, I'll address it at that point. But for now, it at least stops better than it did with the factory brakes on it. So it's good to go for now. I can get it back on the road, clean it up, do all that stuff. Next on it will be tightening the steering up a little bit. I'm sure it needs a new steering gear. It's got the Currie upgraded drag link assembly, so that should be good to go. All right, well, since the other day with the brake upgrade, did pretty well, but when I got back, I did another bleed all the way around on all the calipers, which firmed the pedal up a lot, and then I also found a small vacuum leak on the power brake booster. So I got that corrected, and the brakes are working phenomenally now. So when I was test driving it though, I could tell just from having all the suspension loose that the Jeep wants to wander a little bit back and forth. You have to kind of fight the steering. So I went ahead, jacked it up, and I'm getting ready to do a front end alignment, set my toe in. So watching other videos of people do stuff on YouTube, you know, you always watch it and question it and like, oh, I'd do it differently. I'm sure everyone's gonna have the same thing or watching me do this. I did not do it the safe way. But as you can see, I'm in a sloped gravel drive, so I found the flattest spot I could. I've got the jack and 2 jack stands under it. Not the best way. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but it's what I got, so it's what I'm doing. You may notice that my pipe wrench is a little bit of overkill. Somehow I lost my smaller one, so I'm making do. By the time I was doing the final adjustments, I broke down and went to Lowe's to get a new one. Unfortunately, when I went to do the adjustment, one of my tie rods was seized in the assembly. I ended up having to remove the entire thing so I could put it in a vise and break it loose. I also didn't plan this very well. This week has been the hottest week of the year so far. Temperatures have been in the high 90s and the heat index has been around 110. I made my first adjustment and had it where I thought it should be. I took it for a test drive and found out it was worse than it started. The next day I took it apart and remeasured. Apparently when I was tightening the adjuster sleeves it shifted, so it was out of spec again. A few more tweaks and I got it set at the 1/8 inch of toe in that I wanted it at. I threw the tires back on and did another test drive. This time it tracked just like it should. I still need to figure out how to make sure my axles are centered right and fine-tune all of my control arms. That will have to wait until it cools down. In the meantime, we can now get back to driving the Jeep. That will free me up to get some things done on Shanna's Tahoe, and hopefully get back to working on the old Ford. As far as future plans for the Jeep go, well, it's a Jeep, so those are never ending. I'm hoping to get the front bumper and windshield lights finished next. After that, I'm going to break down and get a soft top for it. It's just too much of a pain to take the hard top on and off. At our house in Indy, we had a hoist system in the garage that made it much easier. And a soft top is much cheaper than building a garage. From there, I'll just slowly work through the rest of the steering components and adding skid plates across the bottom. Of course, I'm sure with all the other projects, this will all take several years.